All right, Rick. So we both work a lot with people who are in that transition to retirement. And
Yeah.
I know we both see like a lot of the same questions over and
Yep.
over again. So I wanted to spend some time today talking about what are some of the biggest questions or concerns
Yeah.
that people have right before retirement. And I want to see kind of what your thoughts are on this and compare notes here. But let's just open it up with that. What do you think is the
Yeah.
number one concern pre-retirees have about pulling the trigger and retiring already?
No question, without a doubt, 100% health insurance for me. It's the
100%.
main thing that comes up. And it's folks that engage me for planning. They say it and then they say it about their friends.
Mm,
Susie's still working because of health. Like everybody is stressed out about health insurance.
yeah.
And in some cases, maybe they should be, but it's, in my opinion, it's mostly around misinformation, and they're getting that information from their friends or from other people that they work with.
Yeah.
Um, and they're just not aware of what's
Mm,
available, how to use it correctly. When I say that, I mean the marketplace or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. Here in Pennsylvania is somewhat
yeah.
unique. We have our own marketplace called Penny, and it
Yep.
is fantastic.
Okay.
Um, you also have income planning around health insurance
Sure.
that you can do that they just don't think of.
Yeah.
So,
Because so tell for people who are not retired, if you're gonna
yeah,
go on marketplace health insurance, and Georgia has a similar website. Actually, Georgia just launched their website last year, and I spent about an hour on the phone yesterday with a client helping them and their agent get enrolled. And there are a couple little snafus. It's getting better. It's not quite on Pennsylvania's level, but
yeah,
um, how are premiums driven? How are your insurance payments driven? How you said there's planning around that. What does that
yeah.
really look like practically?
They're going to base, there's a tax subsidy
Okay.
that's based on essentially your income. It's your modified adjusted gross income.
Yeah.
And so most people don't even know that exists.
Mm,
They say, I got to get to 65 because somebody at work told me it's going to
sure.
cost me and my wife $2,500 a month to have health insurance. That's generally not the case.
Yeah.
But to get the assistance, it's based off of your income. And then the next mistake that I see is, you know, Mr. and Mrs. client say, okay, well, we make $120,000. They punch that in, the subsidy is not very big.
Mm,
And what you don't realize is once you're retired, you can decide where your income comes from
yeah.
and in what years. And so
Sure.
what I do a lot of is strategic planning around that pre 65,
Yep.
which is how can we get you the income that you need to live. When
Yeah.
I say income to you, it's cash flow,
Sure.
but reduce the taxable income that gets reported
Yep.
by taking it out of different accounts. And that gets your taxable income low, your tax subsidies up, and your health insurance very, very manageable. Often we can pull that off.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, well, I'm going to have to go on. Let's say I retire 2 years early before 65 at 63. I'm going to have to go on Cobra. Well, and they start looking. That can be really expensive. That can be up to 102% of the
Yeah.
plan's total cost, not what you were paying, but you and the employer portion. So
Mm-hmm.
even though Cobra is an option for people, the going on the exchange is a lot of times really very cost effective for
It
retiring
is.
clients, especially if they're doing good planning around what am I going to tap for my income sources and what's my taxable income going to be. That's what leads, I think, into a really great second bullet point. I don't know about you, but I think the second thing that people are thinking a lot about is as they're going into retirement is really just this: what can I spend? Here's what I've
Yeah.
saved.
Yeah.
How should I be investing for retirement? Which is another episode we just did. You should go back and listen to.
Yeah.
And how much can I spend in retirement? Would you kind of agree that that's probably a big top of mind question? And how do you
Yeah.
begin to
Can I
answer that?
afford to retire
Sure.
is the way I would frame it. But it comes from, I have this, I got Social Security. Some people have pension, very, very little anymore, but
Yep.
I have Social Security. I've got this big bucket of money. I have no idea how to turn that into sustainable income. I know how to
Yeah.
spend from it randomly, but I don't know how to turn it into sustainable income. And then when I do, is that enough to pay my bills?
Sure.
I mean, that's the biggest question with health insurance, and the two are married together because the health insurance is the question because you don't think you can afford to retire. So once you
Sure.
get that fixed, it's how do I turn this big 401k or whatever it is into income? What we do is cash flow planning to accomplish that. How much are you spending? We inflate it out, do the whole math problem to at least give you an idea of
Yeah.
how that works. But showing someone how a investment turns into income and then stress testing that against different markets and all that other stuff can really open their eyes to say, like, well, maybe we can do this. We
Yeah.
didn't know.
I think there's a lot of benefit to, sometimes I think there's the temptation to answer that question with a lot of rules of thumb. Well, you
Mm-hmm.
could you have $1 million, you could spend X. But
Yeah.
and when I'm meeting people, and I know you do the same thing, we take them through a process where we're not going to just give them that answer right off the bat. And it's not because we're doing the Wizard of Oz smoke and mirrors, but you really have to understand how much risk a family can afford to take, how much risk they're comfortable taking, and other important factors like how do they want to leave money behind to their kids to help buy out a farm.
Yeah.
Are they likely to have to pay for a lot of long-term care and healthcare expenses later in retirement, and how have they planned for that? But I think when you really go through a process to understand a family's values, both
Yeah.
sides of their balance sheet, and what their cash flow is capable of, as well as how they're actually invested, not just what they have, but how they're invested, you're able to come up with a tailored cash flow answer that says, okay, here's the ways that we could accomplish that. Here's what you
Yep.
can actually spend in retirement to meet your goals. But that's definitely, I would say, a huge concern a lot of families have, because it's a pretty complex math
Yeah.
puzzle to solve.
One more point to that, spending, how much can I spend? Just remember that when you retire, you do not need the same top line number that you are making at work.
It's a
So
good
if
point.
you and your wife make $150,000 a year and you're trying to do the math on how to make $150,000 out of your 401k, you don't need it.
All right.
There's no FICA tax coming out of that. There's no 401k contributions coming out of that. At least in the state of Pennsylvania, there's no state or local tax coming out of that.
Sure.
So what you're spending each month is not the same as what you tell people you make at work.
That's why it's important to pull some bank statements, see what it looks like, and then, to your point, model out what's my bottom line net take home
Yeah.
pay in retirement, and how much of a buffer does that give me for fun, right?
The next thing is tied into that because I want to know how much I can make.
Yeah.
Or how much I can spend, I should say. And well, we have this portfolio, we have this 401k, whatever it is, and we both have Social Security.
Mm.
And my best friend at work told me take it as soon as I can, and my whatever, my dad told me to wait until I'm 70.
Yeah.
And everybody else told me something in between. When should I take Social Security? All things being equal, just normal retirees, I usually encourage them to take it when they retire. Like we pick the retirement date separate from when they should take Social Security. And then on that date, whether that means they retired at 62, great. If it's 64, great.
Yep.
There's always situations when it makes sense to wait and,
Sure.
age gaps and things like that. But for most folks, I show them the math, let them make the final decision, but I'm usually encouraging them to take it when they retire. But how do you feel about that?
No, I agree. There are definitely a couple pitfalls you like to look out for. You want to make sure that if there's a big age gap, that the surviving spouse, so the second person to conclude their retirement, isn't put in a really bad situation because they're going down to just one Social Security. So there's spousal claiming strategies to keep in mind. And I would say if you're working part-time in retirement, then you risk some of your benefits being reduced due to your employment if you're taking it younger than your full retirement age. But outside of those, and maybe a couple of other special scenarios, what I like to tell clients is, hey, look, if you take this $2,500 a month right now and you start now instead of at 67, would you actually spend it on stuff that would enhance the quality of your life, or would you just put it in the bank? And if they
Yeah.
tell me no, I would actually spend that money, I would do extra Disney trips with the grandkids, whatever,
Yeah.
then
Do
we
it.
usually try to give them permission to go ahead and take Social Security as soon as they would use it. And my thought behind this, now, if you do the math, yes, if you live to 80, then you get a larger lifetime benefit by delaying till
Yeah.
67, blah, blah, blah. You're only 62 once.
Yeah.
And you only have, one shot at retirement. So
Hmm.
as long as you're not, pardon my French, screwing yourself over long term, as long as you're not
Yeah.
making a long term mistake that's horrible, then take it early and spend it if you can afford to do so, because
Yeah.
that's going to give you, I mean, those are the go go years, your 60s, your early 60s, for that first
Yeah.
5 or 10 years. That's when you're going to want to go and spend the most. You're going to be healthy and active. And if that gives you the ability to do it, great. Now, if you tell me, I'm going to take that $2,500 and put it in my brokerage account, don't do that. Don't
Yeah.
save
Well,
that money. Let the
no,
benefit
and
grow.
you're gonna hear a lot of advisors disagree with that because when they run the
Bring them on.
optimizer calculator, it says, and it does, and I show the client the math. Like if you're that person, if that's important to you, cool.
Yep.
They're gonna say if you wait to 66 and a half or whatever your number
Sure.
is, when you die at 92, you will have received an extra $160,000 from the government over that time. But when I show you where those dollars are at, they're all in your late 80s and your 90s. So I simply ask them, do you want to optimize your 60s and 70s, or do you want to optimize your 80s and 90s? And when you frame it that way, they don't really care about the total amount received, assuming you actually are fortunate to live that
Sure.
long,
Sure. Sure.
right? And that's a whole nother conversation. But that's the way I look at it. And we do the math, we show it to them, but essentially I'm in favor, all things being equal, to take it.
You can show me all day the financial calculator that says you could eke out a few more dollars, but what you can't show me is like the life optimization calculator
Yeah.
that says how many trips, how many gifts to your kids and grandkids could you have given?
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, your kids, they're good kids. They don't want your money when you die. They want
Yeah.
you to do fun stuff with them while you're alive. So
And,
if you
and
could take them all on a mountain trip or whatever and do that instead, like that is way more valuable than an extra $3,000 later on in life.
spending that money, like you said, it doesn't mean we need it. Like we can't go to Disney if we don't have it. What it does
Sure.
is it leaves more money in your portfolio
Yeah.
that then, if you don't spend, will transfer to your kids. Your social
Sure.
security will not. If you die at 77 before you even broke even because you waited longer,
Yeah.
that extra social security that they modeled out until you're 90 doesn't go to to your kids.
You're right.
It just doesn't. So if you're spending those dollars and removing it from your cash flow, leaving it in your portfolio to grow, it goes to someone in the future. Enough about Social
Big time.
Security. Yep.
I like that. What else you got for me? Any uh,
Taxes. They don't
oh,
ask
yes.
about taxes. They don't ask about it because they feel like it's a reverse looking thing, because their whole life during work, I pay taxes after I work, like the next year. It's a
Yeah.
thing that I can't manipulate at all. I just go to work, they take them out, I settle up in April, it's over. Retirement is so different.
Yeah.
You've got levers to pull, you've got things that you can strategize around to reduce your overall tax bill throughout your retirement. They don't ask it, they should be asking it. And I know you do a lot of tax planning too.
Yeah, I think we both do. But yeah, to your point, I love the analogy that's like, oh, a butterfly flapping its wings in Argentina can affect a hurricane in Fort Lauderdale or whatever. There's
Right.
probably a lot of butterflies because there's been a lot of hurricanes in Florida lately. But that's, I think, yeah, in retirement, your taxes really are their own little ecosystem where
Yeah.
your taxable income can affect your healthcare premium for not just from 60 to 65, definitely in that window, but
Yeah.
even beyond. Your Medicare Part B
Yep.
is, very much driven by your modified adjusted gross income. So doing tax planning, having a strategy for what are the numbers that I need to stay below for my income to keep my health insurance manageable,
Yep.
understanding that if you have an IRA, you're going to have to take mandatory distributions at some
Yep.
point in your life. and knowing what those are kind of forecasted to be so that those don't secretly push you up into a tax bracket.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room really to add dollars back into clients' pockets, not even by becoming their accountant and doing tax prep work for them,
No.
but literally just by having a forward-looking tax plan that says, here's what I plan on spending over the next decade. Here are the life events that are going to be impacted that could have an effect on taxes.
Yeah.
And what are just a handful of little proactive things? This shouldn't occupy your mind all the time.
No.
The tax tail should not wag the dog, but just by doing a little bit of cash flow planning and thinking about what that's going to look like, you can go ahead and start being intentional with where am I drawing my income from and by how much, so that way you're not stuck using some rule of thumb.
It doesn't have to be the same every year.
No, definitely not. Probably shouldn't
Markets
be.
up, do this. Markets down, do that. Right?
Yeah.
A couple notable things before we wrap. If you wanted to go Google search something or leave a comment that says, please do a specific video or episode on this. Roth conversions is a way that we do some tax planning in retirement. Tax loss harvesting gets a lot of attention, is super sexy when you're accumulating. But what I do for a lot of retirees is tax gain harvesting, because your tax bracket's down. There's tax gains that we can go grab, pay $0 of capital gains on, reinvest it or set it aside. And there's a lot of ways to nip at that sort of stuff. And just, making strategic withdrawals. So whether your income or whether your income's on set it, forget it, but you're doing big withdrawals, like we're doing that big trip, or we're buying that big thing, being strategic and planning for where those dollars come from, sometimes splitting it between 2 different tax years. I mean, call me in even November and say you need 60 grand. The first thing I'm going to look at is, can we do half of it in January? Right.
Yeah.
And how does that affect things? So just being strategic, looking forward, but do not view taxes in retirement as something that you have no control over and is just something that happens. You do have some ways to control it.
And to your point, and we can wrap up on this, I'm talking middle-class people, not super wealthy people. No, middle-class people who have never done tax planning and they work for 50 years and they say they need to do it in retirement. They might not need to have done it in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
They definitely need to do it when they pull the
trigger. There's a lot of fancy stuff that the high net worth, ultra wealthy can do. That is not this. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about regular, average middle-class retirees should be reviewing this and having some sort of a tax plan.
Absolutely.
Every single year.
Perfect. Good talk, man.
I love it.
All right.